welcome back to Dungeons and Dragons. Jaegermeister t-shirt on. That means it's time to drink Jaeger. Now, you guys have probably seen this as a prop on the show a few times. This is the Dungeonmasters Tome of Knowledge. This book spans all the way from the very first moment that I thought about this sort of new era of playing D&D up until the present moment. I'm not sure what started it, except that I have awesome friends. Gundren, is his name Gundren? Or is it Gerdburgle? Gunder? Gungleton? Gungan? No. I can't even remember there. And then there's Yulbay, and of course Florian the Florist, the Master of the Watch, who you guys know what. I'm getting lost in the details here. Okay. Whew. Let's rewind. The Tome of Knowledge. This book spans the time from when I had the first notion of, hey, maybe we should try getting a cool campaign together, up to present day. It started, believe it or not, as a Burning Wheel campaign called Alfheim. And like any good self-respecting DM, despite all my advice, the first thing I did was this world map. And I think you catch a glimpse of it too in my aged world map video. But that was one of the very first things that I did, 15 months ago now. It's the DM's, the classic Dungeon Master. You just destroy the world with a wave of your hand. It's the DM's Tome of Knowledge expose. This is my second page, so it's a series of sayings, and it's some ink drawings that I would use to make a custom character sheet. Alright, Florian, you're up. Boosh, douche, ACD, do. Okay, yes, damage, you're done. Twigs, what's going on? Boo, 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 boo. The gelatinous cube is going cha-cha-cha, and the thing goes whoosh. Vengeance lends to battle what planning cannot. Righteous choice comes quick, but evil takes its time. So I just did human, dwarf, elf, and orc. Then I started doing stat analysis and weapon categories and how I was going to start to analyze my inventory and store in a way that I could escalate the players. Sometimes if you don't think about it ahead of time, you can find your players getting like way too powerful of shit. Or on the opposite side, their equipment just sucks balls. It's nice to have a balance that's planned so that as the mathematical escalation happens, the weapons kind of go in kind. This is a fun page. I'm really happy with this one. Went down to Portland with some friends and did a drawing session on the architecture, and then based some drawings on what we found on the buildings down there, and kind of came up with this shipbuilding culture that exists up in our Northland, and got a little more architectural reference on doing some helmets and some heads. More guys for encounters, a couple of scenes that I wanted to describe. So rather than just write down descriptions, I kind of wrote these drawings to keep my narrative consistent. Next one, I just did a little bit of character drawing. There's one of the maps is in here for the encounter I called the Witch Hunters. Dungeonmasters, seriously consider a stab at lower fantasy. Like, crazy high fantasy is really tempting, and it's actually a really slippery slope. So take a stab at a world where poverty is really real and there's very little inventory. Magic is kind of feared and exhausting, and a castle is a rare thing. Stuff like this. This will really help you take your time, because I'll tell you, within a year, you're going to be fighting dragons on the astral plane. So pace yourself. You need a good 6 months where it's like kind of good to be able to buy food. There's some sayings here. I have dwarven sayings, but my favorite is an ale given is worth 2 in the gut. Blah blah blah. Here's a brief listing of possible dwarven names: Toothbeard, Old Grey Thumb, Chimrichels, Oakenelk, Feligundo Funt, Axebone, and Mr. Cutson, Mr. Cutson Scratches. Moot McGubbert, Hothead McGarnahan, Unuz Ironfoot, Tubgernard, Boot Myron. The idea of a dwarf named Boot is just so good. Kind of just here's some concepts about what my dwarf character would look like. What is this crap? Oh, these were vows. A true dwarf never parts with his shield. Don't trust your gut. Don't trust your gut. Trust your trust. So more just like sort of doodles of characters and some more dwarven stuff. Again, character doodles and narrative. So this is another narrative piece that gives me an idea of how the group is going to talk about their adventures. And hey, you guys, here's what I was working myself up to. You made it. You watched the video long enough. The guy in the Jaeger t-shirt, drinking mead, hitting Jaeger shots. You made it. Congratulations. Here it comes. This is the first page where the concept of Dungeons and Dragons was born. So if you look near the two drawings of the soul gem there, had this idea. Boxes, ultimate game tables, homebrew rules, how to build a dice set, which is a video that's coming. And then we just started working on, well, yeah, some of the fundamental characters and items of the overall campaign story. Here's starting to design some of the goblin armor and different items that we'll see. Here more thinking about goblins and then getting into Cragmaw and some of the stuff from Phandelver. Phandelver, again, this is a character portrait and then a way that I was tracking goblin damage. There's so many damn goblins in some of those intro. Here's a map of Cragmaw Hideout. And so I started working on a story called The Soul Gem. The Soul Gem is this epic power magic item that, as you probably all know, captures the essence of all the enemies it defeats. We had a Dragonborn character named Eelray Eelbay. He was a retired carnival fist fighter. Kind of a beat up Dragonborn. Crazy hardcore character. Then we had an elf and a dwarf as well, like all good parties. So I was just working on, you know, different portrait art for the characters as they started to form. And some rule variation ideas. And then Hankerin Furinail came into existence. That's the very first drawing of Hankerin. And like notes and phone numbers. You know how like every journal winds up with phone numbers in it? I hate that. Then there's a castle drawing that kind of happened as part of starting to understand how it all began in the Underdark. Yeah, the concept of Northmen. And then I don't know if you guys see my very first craft game video, but this is the plan view of this altar of sacrifice. Here's where I started designing some of the emergent gameplay that's going to be later in the game, where we start to do the card game and we start to understand the inner workings of the gem. And then here's where I designed 6 rooms or so, 4 or 5 rooms, and also the Dwarven Battle Cube, which if you guys have seen the Guardhouse episode, you can see how the Dwarven Battle Cube works. This is an idea for making monster AI so that you wouldn't have to decide what a monster did, so that the characters could start to get a sense of rhythm. Here's just tracking a bunch of hit points from like a play session. Again, tracking hit points, it just becomes a huge mess. And then here's where I started to design the second sort of phase of our story, which involved gelatinous cubes, goblins, bugbears, owlbears, carrion crawlers. And if you guys have watched my world building video, you know this drawing. This is a side view of our game world. And then, you know, we had a big night where the main thing that we battled was a rust monster. So I wanted to do my own quick pen version of the rust monster, one of the coolest monsters of all time. Then, while we were working through some of those encounters, I was already working on the Duragar part of the story, which, hey, cool. That's what I'm working on tonight. I'm actually building some of the Duragar mining equipment. So you just saw the moment where the Book of Knowledge actually meets the project underway. So that's kind of cool. Here's a sketch I did of the party one night as we were starting to work more on the characters. This is just all notes and More notes and more notes. This is actually how the shattered stairs were designed. So you can see the 1, 2, 3 escalation on how the stairs work with the flame skull and the wind and all that crap. More notes. There's like all these pages that say crazy stuff. It makes none of them crazy. Here's our night with the Umber Hulks, designed in 3 rooms with a side map. Again, just plotting a little bit of visual and a whole lot of narrative. You know, we deal with Umber Hulks quite a bit. We're battling a tribe of them called the Morgul Hulks. And they're all basically slave-driven by the Duergar. And they are a massive pain in the ass to kill. Here's where I designed last Friday's adventure. And we are rapidly approaching the present. Here's my town game. Hey, if I get my annotations right, you'll be able to click right here to go to the town game. Here's working on some items that are upcoming in the campaign, including a giant brain sack stuck to a stone and a bug armor set. And then finally, this is where I'm beginning to design the Duergar mines. The mines are these massive shafts where they are unearthing an ancient relic, which is this creature here, which is some kind of war golem. It's made out of the very pillars of the earth. And then here I'm designing the rooms that will be played a week from now. And designing the rooms that will be played a week from now. You guys. So that is exactly what has been written in this book. You guys may have noticed that a lot of the magic that happens, and I think if we get the live camera setup going, you'll see it even more, but a lot of the magic happens is not in all the preparation that I do as the Dungeon Master. The magic happens because the group loves one another. It's brother saving brother. And exactly what the relationship is between Twigs and Florian and the Underbottom brothers is, it's hard to describe, but it's good. They're river folk. They're farm folk. Forest folk. And they find together a solace. This is the first group I've ever had without a dwarf. So when the group started forming, this was my big idea. It was the dwarves are the villains. The dwarves are the villains. Just crazy. Styrofoam stuff. Anyways, the vibe that's resulted is a player group that builds their motivations from love and a belief in one another rather than a constant hunger for death and greed. It feels extremely satisfying being in your 40s and having gone through all the travails involved in becoming the badass Dungeon Master. That character was revered greatly in cartoons when I was a kid. Mainly, of course, on the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. He was Dungeon Master, in case you don't know about it. But much more importantly, there was a wider cultural movement that accepted the term Dungeon Master. It may have been because of the cartoon, it may have been because of Mazes and Monsters and the overall controversy and fright around D&D. But the term Dungeon Master found itself into places where it was not welcome. And that is the sign of a cultural movement that has motivations far deeper than any that are industrial or that are false or that are short-term. There was a craving in the communal imagination that was satisfied by the Dungeon Master. Why is there a social interest in the concept of doing this? Well, there's a lot of interesting answers, but only if you spend two lime looking at the future. Wait a minute. Only if you spend two lime looking at the past. Then it seems complicated. If you look at the present, we're in a world where we have to earn our place. We all have to do our part. We have to continue to believe that it's worth doing. We have to keep trying. We have to actively fight annihilation. And that's what we are doing as Drunken and Dragons people. That's what we're doing by playing as a badass, by being the best you can. We're not showing up and asking. We are showing up bringing. We want to talk about stories. We want to express ourselves in an epic fashion to our friends, not to some imaginary audience, but to actual people sitting there with us that moment, that night, after work. You're tired. You're wondering if you're going to make the payment on the blah 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 blah. But what you do know is that if tonight ends well, you will be level 4. That matters for something. You know, the cool thing about dwarves, beer is more important than food. Okay, seriously, I'm completely out of rants. So, I'm gonna go back to Elminster's Forgotten Realms here. By the way, if you don't have this book, you should get this book. That book matters. Also, you should get some of these copper magnesium dice.